It can be.
I did something.
Yeah, you did. Usually they send us a list of kids that cannot be photographed.
Do people actually don't sign that?
Huh?
Do people actually not sign that?
Yes, and sometimes it's a family situation, like.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So today we're going to start chapter 5. Okay. Your key terms are due Wednesday. I published this morning on Canvas, so these notes are available to you on Canvas. And today we're going to just talk about Congress and the roles of Congress. Now, guys, when we talk about the Constitution, Article 1 is about the legislative branch. What's another term that we use for the legislative branch? Congress. Congress is another term we use for the legislative branch. Right there. Eh? Now, there are 2 houses, yes? Now, what needs to happen now is that you guys listen and focus. You ready? So, how many members are there in the United States House of Representatives?
435.
Thank you. How many members of the Senate? 100. So how many members of Congress?
535.
Okay. Congress is bicameral. There's the House and the Senate. Yes? Now, we know that they make the laws. Yes? L, legislature. L, laws. We also know they control the what?
The purse.
The purse. Okay? And here's what else you don't know. Another role of Congress is to oversee agencies. Where do we find these agencies? In the executive branch. So the House and the Senate are watching the executive branch. They're overseeing these agencies. This is called congressional oversight, Walker. Congressional oversight. Now, have you ever heard of the NSA, the National Security Agency? You know they're watching you. Well, who's watching the NSA? Say it with me. Congress is watching the NSA. Who collects your taxes? What agency does that? The Internal Revenue Service, the IRS. They're watching you to make sure you're paying your taxes. Who's watching the IRS? Say it with me. Congress. You with me on this? So this is the overseeing agencies and then providing services. Now, some of you guys might know this, some of you may not. If you want to go to one of the academies, being that is one of the military academies, like West Point, Annapolis, where the Naval Academy is, or the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, you have to have a letter of recommendation from a member of, say it with me, Congress. Okay, so we got one I know of, Jackson, right? Jackson King, he's going to the Air Force Academy. He's got to have a letter of recommendation from one of his members of Congress in order to get accepted into one of the military academies. And we've had a few over the years. Purvis's older brothers in the Naval Academy. Yeah.
How do they send that?
So you've got to contact your member of Congress and request one, and they provide that service for you. Okay, now you might need to do like an interview, send a resume, get some letters of recommendation, the teacher or a counselor, and then the congressperson will do it for you. Okay, so let's do this right now. Let's learn about our members of Congress in the state of Kansas. Okay, now, if you look at that map over there, the Electoral College map, okay, you can see that Kansas has 6 members of the Electoral College, or 6 Electoral College votes. Yes? Everybody sees that. How many members of the House of Representatives does Kansas have? 4. You subtract 2 from all of those numbers up there. Cash. Subtract 2 from 6, what do you get? So, Kansas has 4 members of the House. Everybody with me? Now, every 10 years, we do a census. And we figure out how many people live in each state. And based on our population, Kansas has 4 members of the House. So we draw 4 districts with the same population in each district. Each district in Kansas, this is the big one, this is the second, this is the third, and we live in the 4th district. Now the map is similar to this. This is not exact. Everybody with me? Okay. About 800,000 people in each one of those districts. 800,000 times 4 equals what? 3.2 million, which is roughly how many people live in the state of Kansas. You want to know how many people live in California? Multiply 800,000 times 52. Or Texas, 38 times 800,000. Okay? Was everybody in here born in the United States? Were you 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 born in the United States? You know how many people in the United States right now that were not born in the United States? 51 million. Foreign-born people in the country right now. 51 million, which is 15.5% of the population was not born in this country. That's the highest it's ever been. Did you know that? Yeah. That's interesting. What percentage of those 51 million never sat in a high school government class and learned what we're learning? I don't know. Okay. But probably at least half. Okay. So, you have the honor of learning this. Now, pay attention. We live in the 4th district. So we have a representative. Does anybody know his name? Used to be. This guy replaced Mike Pompeo. Name? Ron Estes. Cash. What are we playing? Word association?
No, it's just what it reminded me. Yeah, it was in this class, wasn't it?
What was in this?
We talked about it.
Yes.
That's
The
like
Asbestos Hazard Act of 1986. Okay. Now, he's got an R next to his name. Meaning what? He's a Republican. Okay? Now, the big one Tracy Mann. This one is also Republican. Jake Turner. Okay? And then there's one more. This one has a D next to her name. Her name.
Deborah.
You know it?
Donna.
I don't think there's a C in there.
Oh, I thought you meant her name started with a D. That's why I was-
Sharice David represents the 3rd district, which is around Kansas City, Johnson County area. That's with me. Now, Sharice is not only a female, she's also of Native American descent. So she's one of the few Native Americans in Congress, and she's also one of the few openly gay members of the House of Representatives, and she's a lesbian. Okay? That's Sharice David. Okay? Now, we got 4, right? Let's add 2, which is going to be our 2 what? What? Senators, come on. This isn't rocket science. We've been talking about this for freaking months. I don't care. Senator 1, which is the senior senator, meaning that he's been in the Senate longer than the other senator, which is the junior senator. Senior, junior, okay? Jerry, what do you got? Jerry, what? You got a name association?
Tom Jerry? I don't know.
Oh, that's great. Jerry Moran, okay? Now, do any of you guys know who Mrs. Beaker is? Deb Beaker, she works in the advancement office. She's the secretary for our president.
She have voluntary?
No, that's Miss Fisher. Deb's in the back, okay? She's secretary. Well, when Jerry Moran was practicing law in Hays, Kansas, as a young lawyer, she was his secretary. She's on has a personal friendship with him. Okay. Now, the other Republican, the other senator, is Dr. Roger Marshall. Okay. Now, remember how we talk left wing, right wing, moderates? Okay. Let's talk. Jerry Moran, or excuse me, Tracy Mann, conservative. Ron Estes, conservative. Jake LaTurner, conservative. Sharice David, liberal. Roger Marshall, conservative. Jerry Moran, moderate. Now, does anybody know how long a Senate term is? Get elected to the Senate, how many years you serve? 6. The House members, these 4, they serve 2-year terms. Senate is 6. So Jerry Moran is a moderate for 5 years of his 6, and then the election year he becomes a conservative. So he can get reelected. Follow me. Okay. Dr. Marshall is pretty conservative. All right. Now, there's your Congress. Okay, now who represents you? Ron Estes, Jerry Moran, and Roger Marshall. They represent you in Washington, D.C. You are what we call we are, Marsh, we are their constituents. You heard that word before, constituent? People that live in members of Congress districts are constituents. So we're all constituents of Estes, Moran, and Marshall. We're also constituents of Governor Laura Kelly. We're also constituents of President Joe Biden. Okay? Because we live in their district. Okay? Now, so when these people get elected, these are the roles that they play. Now, the first one, making laws. There's a lot that goes into this. So what we're going to look at today, the rest of today, is what goes into a member of Congress's decision-making process and how they vote yes or no. What plays into that? Okay? And the number one factor studies show is personal beliefs. Okay? Actually, I've got a little box behind that so you can read it. Okay. In the background, guys, this is the U.S. Capitol. This is in Washington, D.C. Okay? On one side, you have the House of Representatives. On the other side, you have the U.S. Senate. Okay? And then in the middle, you have the Capitol Rotunda. Have any of you guys been in this building? So you weren't there on January 6th at the riot, breaking in and doing all that? Okay. I wasn't there either. It's probably a good thing because, you know, had I been there in Washington that day, I might have gone in. And then I wouldn't be here. I'd be in jail.
I think Michael was there.
He would have been a minor.
Well, it doesn't matter. He's still there.
Yeah. Okay, so. Guys, when we elect somebody, when we vote for somebody, we're voting for people, hopefully, that think like we do. Okay? Now, if you're a Democrat in the 4th District of Kansas, or the 1st District of Kansas, especially, think there's Democrats have any chance of winning this district? No chance. Everybody knows it. Really, they don't have much of a chance at this seat either. It's been in Republican hands for decades. Okay, now, the urban area here, Kansas City area, a lot of Democrats live there, and so they elected a Democrat. You follow them? So we vote for people that think like we do, that will represent us. All right? And when we do that, we hope that they will use their personal beliefs that we voted on. Like, I voted for you because you said you were this. That's why I voted for you. Okay? So this has a strong influence on how they vote, even if it goes against the voters back home or their constituents. So I use the example here, voting against a flag burning amendment. So we talked about this before. Like, it's legal to burn this in protest in this country, but it makes some people mad and they want to see a law or a punishment doing it, right? So if I were to poll the people of Kansas and say, hey, should we have a punishment for people that burn the flag in protest? And let's say 58% of Kansans agree that there ought to be a punishment. It should be a crime to do it. And if I was representing Kansas, I would say to those 58%, I'd say, well, wait a second. The fact that you can burn this is because of the First Amendment, your freedom of expression, political speech. And to destroy that freedom of speech is worse than somebody burning the flag. So I know 58% of you guys want me to vote in favor of this amendment. I'm going to vote against it because I'm looking out for the public interest, which is the First Amendment, outweighing your voter interest or the majority of the people in my district or state. Guys, follow me on that. Okay? So personal beliefs have a big role. Can you think of any other outside forces besides personal beliefs, which are inside forces, outside forces that members of Congress might take into consideration when voting, yes or no on something? What other things might impact their decision? What outside sources? Is that a child? Did you hear that?
Yeah.
It sounded like a child.
His face. That was funny. Yeah, I don't know if it was that funny, but. I'm going back on the thing. I don't know what. You're crying.
Okay, you don't say.
It's at the 20 minute and a half. Okay, come on. All right. Come on, people. What are some outside influences like that are going to, kind of push members of Congress to vote a certain way? what kind of outside force?
Like, exactly. Like other countries?
Well, maybe the Chinese have some dirt on President Biden's son, and that's an outside force. What about the voters of your freaking district? Maybe they have an impact on how you're going to vote? That's an outside force.
You said that.
How about the people that gave you money to run your freaking campaign to get elected? That would be an outside force. What about the leadership in your party, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat? That might be an outside force. Besides your personal beliefs, you're getting pressure from outside sources to vote a certain way. Yes? That's what we're talking about. You done up here, girl? So, who's a constituent? We are. Okay? What about their interests? Okay, so residents of a congressperson's district may influence the people that represent them to vote a certain way. Listen, if Ron Estes wants to get reelected in the 4th District of Kansas, he can't all of a sudden become some liberal politician that votes for all these spending bills. Where the people in his district are like, hey, you're a Republican. Quit spending so much freaking money. Quit putting us into debt as a nation. Have some fiscal responsibility, man. He's not going to get reelected. He's got to listen to the people that elect him. Yes? Now, there's an easy way to do that. Yesterday, I was sitting at home, and I got a text message from an unknown number. Hi, I'm Ava from US Speaks. We are polling Kansas residents. Can you answer a quick poll? Yes or no? And I replied, yes. It was not a quick poll. It took me like 20 minutes. Okay? And it was a lot of questions about Amazon and AI, artificial intelligence. And I don't know a lot about AI. I know a lot about Amazon because I use it. You know what I mean? You guys use Amazon? About once a month, I'm ordering something on Amazon. Okay? Right? So, all we have to do, guys, is take a poll. Let's poll the residents of the 4th District of Kansas, and let's see what they think. Some politicians do that. They're like, well, if 51% of the people in my district want this, that's how I'm going to vote. Now, that doesn't take leadership, guys. All it does is take a poll. You could have a computer be your representative if all you did was take polls and base your votes based on polls. Follow me? It takes no leadership, takes no thought. Quite pathetic if you ask me. You're going to govern based on polls. Okay? So, but they do answer to the people of their district and the state of Kansas when it comes to our senators. Remember, the senators represent the whole state. So, before voting on bills, they have to consider their constituents. How will this affect the people in my district or in my state? What is it now? What? What is it, Martinez? So let me ask you a question. These representatives are in the U.S. Congress. In Washington, D.C., right? That's where they meet. Yes? We have a state legislature to people. Now, should our members of Congress favor the local interests of the people of the 4th District in the state of Kansas over national interests? So when they're voting, do they take the interest of the United States of America into consideration first, or the people of their states and districts first? What would you rather have? Would you rather Ron Estes look out for the people of the 4th District of Kansas, or look out after the entire nation first and then us? Us? Represent us. Guys, let's throw this out here. What industry or industries are most important to the people of the 4th District of Kansas? What's the biggest employer in the 4th District of Kansas? Who employs more Wichitans than anybody else? Maybe the aircraft industry? Huh? Spirit? Raise your hand if any of you have family members that work for Spirit, Cessna, Beechcraft, Raytheon. Okay, I got 4 in here. 5. 6. Okay, now, how many have family that work for Koch Industries? Which is another big employer. You got 2. Okay, so Ron Estes need to check in on things with the aircraft industry, okay, and Koch Industries, because the people that live in his district, a lot of these people work in these 2 industries, these 2 employers. Follow me. So he's got to take that into consideration. What is good for the local economy here? And he needs to pay attention to that. Now, here's the thing. Cessna and Beechcraft, they don't make passenger jets. Spirit helps make passenger jets. But Cessna and Beechcraft and Raytheon, what kind of planes do they make? Private jets. Have any of you guys ever flown on a private jet? Troilo, when did you fly on a private jet?
My grandma, if you know who it is, Marilyn Richline, she was the president of Cessna.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
That's tough.
Grandma, she passed?
Yeah.
How many times you go on a Cessna private jet?
Twice.
Twice? How old were you?
I was like 12, and I can't remember that.
So 12 was the last time?
Yeah.
Let me tell you guys, there's no better way to travel than by private jet. I've only done it once. And I felt like I was a bigwig, I mean? I felt like this is how the rich and famous travel. Oh my gosh. You just pull up to the hangar at Jabara Airport out east, okay? Park your car, you don't have to pay for parking. There's no security check. You just grab your bag and you walk out on the tarmac, get on the plane, land, there's a car waiting for you, boom, you're there. You don't have to go through all the airport crap. Has everybody in here flown commercial before? Anybody not flown commercial before? Never flown anywhere? Poor child. Actually, you're not missing out.
I thought it was fun.
It does suck. It's a pain in the hand. Okay. Now, it used to kind of be like a really cool thing, but now it's just like a headache. Okay. But you can get there. Depends, like if I'm flying to Indianapolis to go see my daughter, it's an 8.5 hour drive to her college. Okay, by the time you show up at the airport 2 hours early, go through security, wait at your gate, you're there 2 hours early, then the flight, you can't fly direct to Indianapolis, you got to go through Chicago, and then you got to transfer planes, then you fly down to Indianapolis, then you go wait in line at the rental car place, 8.5 hours later, you're there. Might as well hop in the freaking car and go. That's the thing that stinks about flying out of Wichita. Unless you're flying to Chicago, Vegas, Atlanta, Houston, Dallas, Kansas City, make Denver. There are some direct flights to Seattle. You got to fly through somewhere else. Yeah. Okay, sometimes they have those a couple times a week. Yeah. Okay, so. But most of the time, like I'm going to Sacramento this summer for a wedding, California. Huh? Yeah. Flying into Sacramento, and I got to go through Denver. Yeah. So, anyhow. All right, so. Sydney, a delegate. This isn't in your book. I picked this up from a political science class. Okay. Yeah.
Dude, it's weird. It's so hard to remove it. It's like you smell like food. Oh God. Like, where do you go, like, talking to someone who's like, it's so much. Was it burnt hair?
What is going on with you guys today?
I don't know. It's just a weird day.
All right, listen. Delegate, somebody that represents your interests. Okay? So a delegate looks at what the voters say first, and then their personal opinion second. A trustee votes based on their personal opinion first, and then considers the voters' opinion second. Which would you rather have? A trustee or a delegate? Like, should we print $60 billion to produce weapons that we should give to the Ukraine so they can fight against Russia? Good? So, if this is up for a vote in Congress, how do you want your person to vote? You want them to vote based on an opinion poll of the people in the district, the 4th district, or use their personal opinion and then consider what the voters think secondary? No, no depends. Get off the freaking fence, me. Listen.
I want a trustee.
You want a trustee? Pendergrass, what do you want? And why do you guys say that? Because they are supposed to know more than us, right? And we elect people that we hope think like we do to make good decisions for us based on what they know. That's a trustee. Now, in reality, what we want is some type of mix of that. Yes? Like, hey, pay attention to the little people over here, but yeah, use your wisdom and good sense to make good choices for us. That's what we're looking for. Okay. Which is on the fence, yeah. Okay. Now, this picture over here is former Senator Brownback and Roberts with former 4th District Representative Todd Tiahrt unveiling a statue of Eisenhower in the Capitol building. Okay. So, as far as representing Kansas first and the U.S. secondly, that's a tough one as well. Okay, but our representatives, guys, have to pay attention to our state and our district. Because that's what affects us. Okay, if something bad happens with Cessna, something bad happens with Boeing or Spirit, this affects our families, affects our community. Okay, so we want them there in Washington actually promoting these things, not tearing them down. If that makes sense. Okay. The other two major things in the state of Kansas, guys. Obviously, agriculture. The other one is natural gas. I don't know if you guys know this, but we produce a lot of natural gas in the state of Kansas. Okay. It's a huge part of our economy. Now, what do the tax revenue we get from business helps pay for our schools, guys, for our roads, which are the two most expensive things. If natural gas and agriculture have a rough year, we don't get as much money being paid in taxes in the state of Kansas, which means we can't fund our schools, we can't fund our roads and bridges. Rely on the federal government for that money we talked about earlier. Okay, so the better our businesses are doing, the more tax revenue we get. When our businesses are doing well, they hire more employees, and you guys get good jobs with good benefits, and you pay taxes. Does that make sense? Okay. So, other influences on members of Congress, outside influences, okay, are interest groups and political action committees. Now, interest groups we've talked about. Remember when we talked about Madison's Federalist Paper number 10? Factions. You guys remember that discussion? Factions. Ring a bell? Hasn't been that long. Okay. Now, these are people acting together to achieve shared political goals. So remember, the NRA, the National Rifle Association, the AARP, PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. These are groups of people that have similar passions, and they act together to achieve shared goals. And what do interest groups do? Well, they provide information on issues. Remember any dairy farming families in here? Is dairy good for you? Yes and no. Like if you just sat around on a Saturday and watched Dune 1 and Dune 2 for 6 hours and ate a big chunk of cheese, which is cherry, which is dairy. Is that healthy? Yeah. Guy. What about butter? Like just slapping a big tub of butter on top of your baked potato. Like a ladle full. We've talked about ladles in here, haven't we? Yes.
You said potato again?
Potato.
That's not what you said the first time.
It's not?
Potato.
You said potato.
Potato. Dude, worked on the garden this weekend. Planted a bunch of potatoes. New potatoes. You know, the little red ones? Yeah. Put in about 20. I have a lot of potato. Now, what were we talking about? Butter, dairy. Now, hey, the dairy farmers want you to eat cheese and butter. Yes? If the dairy farmers helped get me elected, am I going to be pushing the Department of Agriculture to push dairy on our children. And depending on what kind of dairy that is, cheese, butter, I might not be doing the people of my district a favor. Something to think about. So these interest groups suggest legislation as well. They say, hey, member of Congress that we helped get elected, there ought to be a law. This law ought to protect cattle ranchers. And they promote legislation that is favorable to them. Now, let me ask you a question. If the dairy farmers help you get elected, they give you campaign money, and you advocate legislation that helps dairy farmers, have the dairy farmers effectively bought your vote? If I'm a supporter of the Second Amendment, and I believe that the individual has the right to possess a gun to protect themselves, their property, and their family, I support that. And the NRA gives me money. A piece of legislation comes up in support of the Second Amendment, and I vote for it. Did the NRA just buy a vote? No. They gave money to somebody that believed the same things that they believe. And if I sought out the dairy farmers of America and said, hey, I'm all about you guys, and I think dairy is good, especially in moderation when it comes to cheese and butter, but your other stuff is kick butt. I like eggs, I like milk. Don't like milk, but people do. My constituents love milk.
You don't like milk?
Milk is disgusting.
Oh my gosh, I just chugged it out the gallon last night.
I haven't drank milk since you've been alive.
I didn't drink
Who likes milk?
Oh, it's amazing.
With my cereal.
Oh, I'll have it at night. I'll have a glass of milk.
Cereal, protein shake,
Oh,
wait.
Ice cream.
Ice cream's super good.
That's good for you. Now think about this, guys. Big, are you listening? Big sugar. So people that make sugar. Now, is sugar good for you? The answer is no. And what's the biggest killer of human beings in the United States of America?
Diabetes.
Heart disease. Okay? Now, diabetes helps lead to heart disease. You don't want diabetes. I don't want diabetes. You know what diabetes means? That probably you're going to die sooner than later if you have diabetes. Okay? And what causes diabetes? Your diet. Yes? And if it has too much sugar in it, it can cause diabetes. Now, sugar companies and people that produce sugary foods, like the cereal you were just talking about, they want you to keep eating sugar. Yes? Do they have a lot of power in Washington? Do they help a lot of people in Congress get elected? One thing that I'm learning through changing my diet, guys, if you look at products sold in the United States and then the same products sold in Europe, you know how when you look at all the ingredients, the list in American food is long. And you go to Europe, they don't let them put that crap in their food and sell it in their countries. But you're allowed to put all kinds of crap in the food we eat. You guys learned about this? You should. Okay? Like the stuff that they're poisoning us. Now, YouTube's probably going to take this down. So, because they're probably in bed with these companies. Okay? So, I don't care. All right? Listen. Now, guys, some of these big businesses we need. We need them, okay? They employ American people, okay? But not all of them have your best interest. Pharmaceuticals. Listen, do the pharmaceutical companies want you sick so they can sell you drugs? Because if everybody in this country is healthy, they're not selling drugs. You following me? Think about that. Now, I take a drug every day for arthritis. Am I glad that the pharmaceutical companies developed that drug? Absolutely. Okay? There's good and bad with all of these things. Okay? The sicker the people are, better the business model is. The more laws that Congress passes saying that people need to take these things, these vaccines, these things, and so forth, the more powerful these pharmaceuticals are. Yes.
Do you think that there's like a straight cure to most cancers, but they just...
See, I don't know about that. I've heard things, you know, occasionally I'll run across a tweet or something where people say this will cure cancer. And then they give a story about it, like, you know, the government's suppressing this knowledge. Have you seen these? You ever seen something like that on YouTube or Twitter? Okay. I don't know, Michael.
I've seen so many things that like, there's no way that we're in this era of medicine or whatever.
Right.
We don't have a cure.
Yeah.
Cancer, they just do it for the money. You know, they do chemotherapy.
Yeah.
Other
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's a conspiracy or not. Okay. All right. So the point is, guys, it's kind of misleading to say that the NRA is buying a vote. If I vote pro-gun in Congress, they're sending money to people that think like they do. Now, does that go on where members of Congress will vote for somebody that gave them a lot of money that maybe they don't truly believe in, but they're doing it because they got the money? I'm sure that happens, guys. Those are the people you don't want to elect. You know what I mean? You don't want those people that are taking the money and don't believe it's good, but they're doing it anyways because of the money. That's why the media is so important. The media exposes this sort of thing when they're doing their job well. Okay? All right. So evidence shows that far more votes are cast for bills that favor those that give money. Duh. Okay? But are they buying votes or is that misleading? So as this says right here, most interest groups contribute money to those candidates that think like they do. The NRA is not going to give me money if I support all kinds of new gun restrictions. If I'm opposed to all kinds of new gun restrictions, then the NRA might give me money to run for office. You follow? Okay. So this political cartoon down here just has a bunch of like Rolls Royces right here. And it says on the front of the plates, the license plates, labor, like labor unions, dairy. Over here is medical. All these lobbyists. Lobbyists are people that try to convince members of Congress to vote a certain way. But can I just give you an example locally? I know a guy that is a lobbyist for convenience store owners in the state of Kansas. So he goes to Topeka and advocates for laws that help convenience stores. Now, convenience stores are owned by people like you and me. Now, if you're not aware, if you've never bought tobacco, there's a big tax on tobacco in the state of Kansas, which makes it more expensive. Yes? Now, where do most people that use tobacco get tobacco products? Where do they buy them? Gas station, convenience stores. Yes? That's a huge part of how convenience stores survive, is selling tobacco. If the state puts a big tax on tobacco, does this hurt convenience stores? Because they're going to sell less tobacco. Now, let me ask you this. Who's more likely to use tobacco? Somebody that's highly educated or somebody with less education? Who's more likely to use tobacco? Less education. Which means if you have less education means you generally make less money. Yes? So a tax on tobacco is a tax on who? The poor. So not only are you taxing the poor, you're hurting the convenience store business owner. Now, what's worse, lung cancer rates or high taxes on the poor and or on making it more difficult for convenience store owners? That's what you got to weigh. So the lobbyist goes to Topeka and says, listen, if you put this high tax on convenience stores, they're going to lose money. They can't survive without selling tobacco. Now, Quick Trip, guys, if you shop there, guys, it's just freaking expensive. Quick Trip is expensive. You should not shop there. Guys, the liquor store people in this state, outraged because Dillon's, Walmart, Sam's, they can sell beer. Now, what if Dillon's could sell whiskey and wine? What would happen to the liquor store business in Kansas if the grocery stores could sell liquor and wine? It would put them out of business. So guess what? Liquor store owners have an interest group. They send people to Topeka saying you do not want to put liquor in the grocery stores. You will destroy our business. Now, what would be better for the consumer? If you could buy liquor at Dillon's and Walmart, Sam's, what would be better for the consumer? Can Dillon's sell it cheaper than the liquor store? We know Walmart can. Right? Okay. These are issues that we deal with, like outside interest groups hitting members of Congress on how to vote. Does this make sense? It's a big business. All right, running out of time. Peace. Like and subscribe.